I still remember the exact moment my entire life shattered. It was a Tuesday morning in October, the kind of crisp autumn day where the fields glow golden and the air smells like earth and memory. I was standing in our kitchen, the same kitchen where my mother taught me to bake bread 40 years ago, holding a manila envelope that had arrived by mistake. Inside was my father's will, the real one. Or so I thought. My name was Linda Crawford, 58 years old, and for 30 years I had poured every ounce of my heart into this land. I woke before dawn to feed the chickens. I patched fences in the rain. I held my father's hand through his final breaths just 6 weeks earlier. And according to this document, none of it mattered. The Crawford family farm, including all land, structures, and assets, shall be inherited in full by Edward James Crawford. Eddie, my younger brother. The man who left for the city 20 years ago and came back maybe twice a year. The man who couldn't tell a combine from a tractor. My hands started shaking. I read it again. And again. There had to be a mistake. But that was just the beginning of my plan. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with everything, this story is for you. I didn't cry right away. That's the strange thing about shock. It freezes you solid before it breaks you apart. I sat at the kitchen table for an hour, maybe two, just staring at those words. My coffee went cold. The morning chores went undone. Outside, the farm continued like nothing had changed. But inside me, everything had collapsed. Finally, I called the family lawyer. Mr. Hendricks, this is Linda Crawford. I need to talk to you about my father's will. There was a pause. Linda, I'm so sorry for your loss. But I'm not sure what you mean. The will was already executed. Your brother Eddie has the original. That's the problem, I said, my voice barely steady. I received a copy by mistake. And it says the entire farm goes to Eddie. Is that really what Dad wanted? Another pause. Longer this time. Linda, I can't discuss the specifics over the phone, but yes, that is what the will states. I felt the room tilt. Why? I whispered. Why would he do that? I'm sorry. I truly am. But those were your father's wishes. I hung up. And then, finally, I cried. That evening, my mother came into the kitchen. She moved slowly now, her arthritis worse since Dad passed. She poured herself tea and sat across from me. You saw it, didn't you? She said quietly. I looked up, my eyes still red. You knew? She nodded. Your father and I discussed it many times. But why, Mom? I've been here my whole life. I gave up college. I gave up my own dreams. I stayed because you needed me, because the farm needed me. Her face was calm, too calm. Eddie has a mind for business, Linda. He understands investments, markets, growth. Your father believed he could take this farm into the future, make it profitable again. Profitable? My voice cracked. I've kept this place running for 30 years. I know every inch of this soil. Eddie doesn't even know how to milk a cow. He'll learn. Or he'll hire people. That's what businessmen do. I stared at her. This woman I had cared for, cooked for, bathed when she was too weak to stand. And what about me? I asked. She sipped her tea. You'll always have a home here, sweetheart. Eddie promised. A home, not my home, just a home. I went to bed that night feeling like a ghost in my own life. But ghosts see things the living miss. Over the next few days, I started going through the farm office. Dad had always been meticulous with records, tax forms, loan documents, feed orders, everything filed and labeled. And that's when I found the first discrepancy. A payment of $15,000, made out to Eddie 3 years ago. The memo line said farm improvement loan, but I had managed the farm improvements. We'd never taken a loan that year. I kept digging. Another payment, $10,000, then $12,000, all made out to Eddie, all labeled as farm expenses. My pulse quickened. I pulled the bank statements, cross-referenced them with the tax filings, and slowly, a pattern emerged. Eddie had been siphoning money from the farm for years, small amounts at first, then larger, always disguised as legitimate expenses. And my father had signed off on every single one. Why, Dad, I whispered to the empty room. Why did you let him do this? The next Sunday, Eddie came to visit. He pulled up in his leased BMW, dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than a month of feed. Hey, sis, he said, giving me a quick hug. How are you holding up? Fine, I lied. We sat on the porch. Mom brought out lemonade. Eddie talked about the market, interest rates, some investment opportunity in renewable energy. I watched him, really watched him, the way he smiled too easily, the way he never quite looked me in the eye. So, he said eventually, I've been thinking about the farm. Once the estate settles, I'm planning to bring in a management company, modernize operations, maybe lease out some acreage. Lease it out? My mother frowned. But this is family land. It's also an asset, Mom. We need to think strategically. I set down my lemonade. Eddie, can I ask you something? Sure. Did you ever pay back those loans? He blinked. What loans? The 15,000, the 10, the 12, all those farm improvement loans. His smile faltered, just for a second, but I saw it. Those were Dad's idea, he said smoothly. He wanted to help me get started in the city. It was an investment in the family. An investment. I nodded slowly. And the farm, that's an investment too, right? Linda, don't make this personal. But it was already personal. It had always been personal. He left an hour later, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this go. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my father's face in those final days, how he'd held my hand and whispered, "Thank you for everything, Linda." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I made a mistake." Just, "Thank you." As if 30 years of sacrifice was enough. As if I should be grateful for the privilege of losing everything. There had to be more to this story. The next morning, I drove into town to see Mr. Hendricks in person. His office was above the hardware store, the same place he'd practiced law for 40 years. Linda, he said, genuinely surprised. I didn't expect to see you. I need to understand something, I said, sitting down without waiting for an invitation. My father trusted you. So I'm asking you directly. Does that will make sense to you? He shifted uncomfortably. It's not my place to question a client's wishes. But you knew him. You knew our family. Did he ever explain why? Hendricks sighed, rubbed his eyes. Off the record? I nodded. Your father was worried, he said quietly. The farm was struggling. Had been for years. He believed Eddie had the skills to turn it around, to make it viable again. And what about me? He said you were too close to it, too emotional, that you'd keep running it the same way out of sentiment, even if it meant losing everything. The words hit like a punch. Too emotional, I repeated. I kept that farm alive while Eddie was in the city losing money on bad stocks. I know, Hendricks said. For what it's worth, I advised against it. But he was adamant. I stood up. Thank you for your honesty. Linda, he called as I reached the door. If you're thinking of contesting this, it won't be easy. I turned back. Neither was the last 30 years. I spent the next week becoming an investigator. I pulled every financial record I could find. I called the bank. I visited the county recorder's office. I learned more about property law in 7 days than I had in my entire life. And I found something. Buried in the property deed from 1987 was a clause. A piece of land, 40 acres on the eastern boundary, had been put in both Eddie's and my name when we were young. A gift from our grandparents, meant to be split equally. That land was never mentioned in the will, because legally it couldn't be. It was already ours. My heart was racing as I photocopied the deed. This land was legally mine. Half of it, at least. And it was some of the best soil on the property. But more importantly, it meant the will wasn't as airtight as Eddie thought. I contacted a different lawyer, Sarah Chen, a woman about my age who'd recently opened a practice specializing in estate disputes. This is interesting, she said, studying the documents I'd brought. If this land was never your father's to give away, then the will is incomplete at best. At worst, it's evidence of intent to defraud. What do I need to prove? I asked. That your father's will doesn't reflect his true intentions, or that it was influenced by someone who stood to benefit. Eddie's face flashed in my mind. All those visits over the years, all those private conversations with Dad in the office. How do I prove that? Sarah leaned back. We need to find the original will. The first one. People don't usually change their entire estate plan without drafts, notes, or earlier versions. I went back to the farmhouse that night with new purpose. Mom was already asleep. I went to Dad's office and started searching more carefully. Behind the file cabinet, I found a cardboard box. Inside were old photo albums, my childhood report cards, and at the bottom, a leather folder I'd never seen before. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter dated 2 years ago. My father's handwriting, shaky but clear. To whom it may concern, it is my wish that Crawford Farm remain in the hands of the child who has loved it most. Linda has been my partner in every season, every hardship. She knows this land like her own heartbeat. When I am gone, the farm should be hers. Eddie has made his life elsewhere, and I am proud of him. But this land belongs to Linda. Tears blurred my vision. This was it. This was the truth. But there was more in the folder. A second will, dated 6 months later. Typed, formal, and completely different. Everything to Eddie. I compared the signatures. The handwriting on the letter was strong, confident. The signature on the second will was shaky, uncertain. My father had been sick those last 6 months, on medication, sometimes confused. What had Eddie done? The next morning I called Sarah. I found something, I said. I think my father wrote an earlier will, or at least a letter of intent, and I think Eddie influenced him to change it. Can you bring it to my office? Yes? I'll be there in an hour. As I was gathering the documents, my mother appeared in the doorway. What are you doing, Linda? I turned to face her. I'm finding out the truth. The truth? She looked tired, sad. The truth is your father made his choice. Did he, Mom? Or did Eddie make it for him? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Your brother has always been persuasive. Is that what we're calling it now? She sat down heavily. Your father was afraid, Linda. Afraid the farm would die with him. Eddie promised he could save it, turn it into something bigger. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him. Her voice cracked. I didn't want to think about losing this place. Eddie made it sound so simple, so certain. I knelt beside her chair. Mom, Eddie's been stealing from this farm for years. I have the bank records. He used Dad's trust to fund his own investments. She closed her eyes. I know. You know? I suspected. But your father, he didn't want to see it. He wanted to believe in Eddie. Believe that at least one of his children had escaped this place and made something of themselves. And what about me? I asked quietly. What did he believe about me? She took my hand. That you were too good for this world. That you deserved more than soil under your fingernails and debt on your shoulders. He thought he was protecting you. By giving away my home? She had no answer for that. Sarah Chen looked over everything I'd brought. The handwritten letter, the suspicious payments, the property deed for the 40 acres, the timeline of my father's illness. This is substantial, she said, but we need to be careful. Contesting a will is expensive and emotionally draining. Are you prepared for that? I've been preparing my whole life, I said. She nodded. Then let's file a petition. We'll claim undue influence and present the earlier letter as evidence of your father's true intent. We'll also address the jointly owned land that was omitted from the will. What are our chances? Honestly, 50-50. But the fact that money was being funneled to Eddie during the time the will was changed, that helps considerably. I signed the papers that day, and 2 days later, Eddie called. What the hell are you doing? His voice was sharp, angry. I just got a notice that you're contesting Dad's will. I'm correcting a mistake, I said calmly. A mistake? Dad knew exactly what he was doing. Did he, Eddie? Because I found some interesting bank records. $15,000 here, $10,000 there, all payments to you, all marked as farm expenses. But I ran the farm, Eddie, and I never approved those payments. Silence. Dad gave me that money, he said finally. It was his to give. It was the farm's money. Money that was supposed to keep this place running, and you used it for your investments. I was going to pay it back. When? After you sold the land? Linda, you don't understand business. That money was seed capital. I was building something. You were stealing, I said quietly, from your own family, from the land that fed you your entire childhood. I'm not going to let you ruin this, he said, his voice cold now. Dad's will is legal. You're just bitter because you wasted your life on a failing farm. And he hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Because now I knew exactly who my brother really was. The hearing was scheduled for December. In the meantime, Sarah and I built our case. We interviewed the family doctor, who confirmed that my father had been on heavy medication in his final months, medication that could cause confusion and susceptibility to suggestion. We pulled Eddie's financial records. He'd taken out loans using the farm as collateral without my knowledge or consent. And then we found the big one, a recorded phone call between Eddie and an investment broker dated 3 months before Dad's death. In it, Eddie talked about securing the property and convincing the old man that a clean transfer to one heir would avoid complications. It wasn't quite a confession, but it was close enough. If you've ever watched someone you loved be manipulated by greed, you know the anger that burns in your chest, the kind that doesn't explode. It hardens into something unbreakable. 2 weeks before the hearing, I was working in the barn when I heard a car pull up. It was Eddie's BMW. He got out slowly. He looked different. Thinner. Tired. Linda, he said. Can we talk? I set down the hay bale. I don't think we have anything to say to each other. Please. His voice was softer now, almost desperate. I know you're angry. I know I screwed up. But you don't have to do this. We can work something out. Work what out, Eddie? You want to negotiate for the land you stole? I didn't steal anything. Dad gave it to me. Dad gave you everything because you convinced him he had no choice. Because you made him think I wasn't good enough. He ran a hand through his hair. That's not... I didn't mean it that way. Then how did you mean it? He looked at me, really looked at me. And for a second, I saw something that might have been regret. I thought I could fix it, he said. I thought if I could turn the farm into something profitable, everyone would win. You'd see that I was right, that Dad was right to trust me. And the money you took? Was that part of fixing things? He looked away. I made mistakes. I know that, but I can pay it back. Give me a chance, Linda. Don't drag this through court. It'll destroy what's left of our family. I thought about that, about the years we'd played together as children, about the time he taught me to ride a bike, about the brother I used to know before ambition turned him into a stranger. You destroyed our family the moment you chose money over me, I said. The court is just making it official. He stood there for a moment longer. Then he got back in his car and drove away. I didn't watch him go. The hearing took place on a gray December morning. The courthouse was old, with wooden benches and the smell of floor polish and ancient paper. Eddie sat on one side with his lawyer, an expensive-looking man in a suit that probably cost more than my truck. I sat on the other side with Sarah. Mom sat in the back. She'd refused to take sides, but she'd come anyway. I think she needed to see how this ended. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Margaret Holbrook. She had the look of someone who'd heard every excuse and seen every scheme. Eddie's lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a responsible son, a successful businessman who'd been entrusted with the family legacy. He talked about my father's sound mind and clear intentions. He made me sound like a disgruntled farmhand who couldn't accept reality. Then it was our turn. Sarah presented the handwritten letter, the bank records, the timeline of my father's illness and medication, the phone call recording. She presented the deed for the 40 acres that Eddie's lawyer had conveniently forgotten to mention, and then she called me to testify. I told my story, not with anger, not with tears, just with the truth. I talked about 30 years of waking before dawn, of nursing my father through his final illness, of keeping that farm alive through droughts and debts and heartbreak. I talked about finding the payments to Eddie, about the money that disappeared while I was struggling to make payroll for our single hired hand. And I talked about the brother I used to know, the one who hadn't yet learned that family was something you could trade for profit. When I finished, the courtroom was quiet. Judge Holbrook looked at Eddie. "Mr. Crawford, do you have anything to say?" Eddie stood up. His lawyer tried to stop him, but Eddie waved him off. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said. His voice was shaky. "I thought I could make the farm profitable, turn it into something Dad would be proud of. I convinced myself that was what he really wanted." He looked at me. "I was wrong. I know that now. I let ambition turn me into someone I don't recognize. Someone who hurt the person who deserved it least." There were tears in his eyes, real ones. "I'm sorry, Linda. I'm so sorry." The judge watched this exchange with an unreadable expression. Then she said, "I'll have my decision by next week." Those 7 days were the longest of my life. I kept working the farm, fed the animals, repaired fences. The work was the only thing that kept me sane. Mom didn't say much, but one evening, she came out to the barn where I was working. "Whatever happens," she said quietly, "I want you to know I'm proud of you." I looked up. "Proud? You stood up for yourself. You fought for what was right. I should have done that years ago, should have questioned Eddie more, should have protected you better." "Mom, let me finish." She took my hand. "Your father loved you, Linda. He was just afraid. Afraid of failing, of losing the farm. Eddie promised him certainty, and your father was too scared to see it was a lie." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I was afraid too. Afraid of losing both my children if I took sides. But silence is its own kind of betrayal, isn't it?" We stood there in the barn, surrounded by the smell of hay and animals and hard work. And for the first time since Dad died, I felt like I still had a parent. The call came on a Friday. "Linda, it's Sarah." Judge Holbrook issued her ruling. My heart stopped. "And?" "She ruled in your favor." I couldn't breathe. The judge found clear evidence of undue influence. She declared the second will invalid and recognized your father's earlier letter as a more accurate representation of his wishes. "The farm goes to you, Linda. All of it except the investments Eddie made with the siphoned funds. He'll have to settle those debts himself." I sat down hard on the porch steps. "The 40 acres?" I managed to ask. "Recognized as jointly owned. If you want Eddie's half, you'll have to buy him out at fair market value." But the judge noted that might be difficult given his financial situation. "What does that mean?" "It means Eddie's broke. His investments failed. He's got nothing left except debt and a tarnished reputation." I should have felt victorious, triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. "Thank you, Sarah, for everything. You did this yourself, Linda. You fought for what was yours. That takes courage." After I hung up, I sat on that porch for a long time. The winter sun was setting, painting the fields gold and amber, the same fields my grandparents had worked, that my parents had loved, that I had bled for. They were mine now, truly mine, but the victory tasted like ash. Eddie didn't contest the ruling. His lawyer advised him it would be pointless and expensive. He called me 2 days after the judgment. "Linda." "Eddie." Silence. Then, "I'm leaving town. Moving west. Found a job with a small firm in Oregon. Nothing fancy, but it's a start." "Okay. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know what I did was—" His voice broke. "I destroyed everything. Our family, Dad's trust, your faith in me." I closed my eyes. "Why, Eddie? Why wasn't it enough to just have your own life? Why did you need mine too?" "Because I was drowning," he said quietly. "My investments failed, I was in debt. I thought if I could just get control of the farm, I could sell parts of it, pay off my creditors, start over. I convinced myself it was for the family, but really, it was desperation, greed, fear. You could have just asked for help. Would you have helped me? I thought about that, honestly thought about it. Probably, I said, if you'd been honest. If you'd treated me like family instead of an obstacle. He was crying now. I could hear it in his breath. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I know, I said, and I did. Can you ever forgive me? That was the question, wasn't it? I don't know yet, I said honestly, but I don't hate you either. You're still my brother, Eddie. You just forgot what that meant. Yeah, he laughed bitterly. I did. Take care of yourself. And Eddie? Yeah? Don't run from your mistakes. Learn from them. Be better. I'll try. We said goodbye, and I knew somehow that it would be years before I heard from him again. Maybe that was okay. Spring came slowly that year. I hired 2 local kids to help with the planting, both of them fresh out of high school, unsure what they wanted from life. I taught them about soil rotation and irrigation, about reading the weather and trusting your instincts, about the satisfaction of watching something grow because you cared for it. One afternoon, one of them, a girl named Maya, asked me, Miss Linda, why do you still do this? Wouldn't it be easier to just sell and retire? I looked out at the fields, at the green shoots pushing through dark earth. Because this land is more than money, I said. It's memory. It's legacy. It's proof that hard work and love can survive anything, even betrayal. She thought about that. But doesn't it hurt? Knowing what your brother did? Every single day, I admitted. But pain isn't the end of the story. What you do with it, that's what matters. That summer, I did something I'd thought about for years, but never had the courage to do. I started the Crawford Community Farm Initiative. I took the 40 acres Eddie and I had jointly owned, the acres he'd signed over to me to settle his debts, and I turned them into training plots for young farmers, low-cost leases, mentorship programs, equipment sharing. I wanted to give other people the chance I'd almost lost, the chance to build something real with their own hands. The first harvest was small but beautiful. Maya and the other young farmers brought their families to celebrate. We had a potluck in the field, folding tables loaded with food, kids running through the rows, laughter echoing into the evening. Mom came too. She was quieter now, more frail. But she smiled as she watched the young people work. Your father would have loved this, she said. Would he? I asked. There was no bitterness in my voice, just genuine curiosity. She nodded. The real him, the one who loved this land more than money, the one who forgot himself at the end. Yes, he would have loved it. I held her hand, and I let go of the last bit of anger I'd been carrying. 5 years have passed since the day I stood in that kitchen, holding a will that tried to erase me. The farm is thriving now, not because it's bigger or more profitable, but because it's alive with purpose. The Crawford Community Farm has graduated 17 young farmers. 3 of them have bought their own land. 4 work cooperatively on shared plots. The rest are still learning, still growing. I received a letter from Eddie last Christmas. He's married now, working as an accountant, living a quiet life. He wrote, I think about the farm every day, about the person I was and the person you always were. You saved something I almost destroyed. Thank you for that, and thank you for teaching me what family really means, even if I had to lose everything to learn it. I haven't written back yet. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Forgiveness isn't always about reconciliation. Sometimes it's just about letting go of the weight so you can move forward. Mom passed away last spring, peacefully, in her sleep. At the funeral, I scattered her ashes in the East Field, the one she'd loved most. I'm 63 now. My back aches in the mornings. My hands are weathered and scarred. But when I stand on the porch at sunset and look out at the land, my land, I feel something I never thought I'd feel again. Peace. Real family isn't the people you're born to. It's the people who actually want you there, who show up, who do the work. And justice isn't just about winning or losing. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything. That day, justice was finally served. But more importantly, I learned that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's creation. It's building something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. It's proving that love and integrity outlast greed every single time. For the first time in my life, I felt free. What would you have done?